March doesn't just crown champions, it creates legends. And every year, there's a player you didn't see coming and suddenly you just can't forget him. It was Stephen Curry tanking over the tournament, Jack Golke lighting up Kentucky from 3, DJ Burns becoming the story of March. And for 2 weeks, they're everywhere. Every highlight, every upset, every conversation. And every year it happens again. So the question becomes, who's it going to be this time? Now, before we get into this, I want to set a couple ground rules. So one, I'm not picking Final Four teams. Secondly, I'm not going to be picking the best players in the country. And my plan is to pick guys that you really haven't heard about already. These are the 5 guys that are, in a team that didn't get a ton of national attention throughout the year, but they find themselves in a position where if they win a couple games, they can really take over the tournament. So they're the ones that are going to end up all over your timelines if they do well. And they're the names that everyone's going to be talking about come the second weekend of this tournament. So this year, these are the 5 guys that I'm betting on. So let's start off with Allen Graves from Santa Clara. He's a 6'9" freshman forward, and it's exactly the type of player that I'm talking about that uses March to completely change the trajectory of his college career. So Graves is just a really well-rounded forward at 6'9", 225. He's got the size and the physicality, but he also has the skill to impact the game in a lot of different ways. He can handle it, make plays, knock down shots, and he really just fits perfectly into the offense that Santa Clara runs. So that combination is really what stands out to me for this tournament, because when you're watching these early round games and a freshman his size is doing a little bit of everything, that's when people start to take notice. And now with the transfer portal, these are the exact type of players that blow up in March, and then a few weeks later, they're one of the most talked about names in the portal. They land at a high major, and suddenly they're one of the best players in a completely different stage. So for me, if Santa Clara happens to win a game or two, don't just expect Graves to have a moment. Expect him to have a series of moments that leads to him being one of the more talked about players in the portal and really changes his entire situation heading into next year. Next up, we're going to talk Robbie Avila from St. Louis. And this is one of those players where the first time you watch him, you're not really going to be sure what you're looking at. Now, Avila tends to get overlooked because he doesn't look like your typical star. He's not overly athletic. He's not blowing by defenders. Certainly doesn't jump out of the gym. But then you watch him play, and he just kind of controls everything. Now, as a big, he just has an elite level feel for the game. The way he passes and the way he reads defense is really the way he operates out of the post and at the top. It's completely different. And these are the players that just kind of explode in March, because once people see it and they see the creativity and the skill and the control, the name starts to spread fast. And clips have already started circulating about this guy since his time at Indiana State. And he's gotten, some virality to his game. So if St. Louis wins a game or two, he's going to be one of the most talked about players in the tournament just because of his blend of size and his persona. But overall, with his ability to shoot from 3 and dominate inside with great touch, he's just one of those guys that this is going to be a media darling, no matter how St. Louis does in the tournament. Now, this next guy is a little bit different. Paulius Murauskas at St. Mary's. If you've watched him this year, you already know how good he is, but really most people just haven't had a chance to see his game. So St. Mary's plays a very specific style. It can be slower and more deliberate, and it's not always the easiest team to watch if you're just flipping through games with them being on the West Coast. But within that system, Murauskas just produces. I mean, he's efficient, he's physical at times, and he understands exactly where he needs to be and when he needs to make a play. And that's what makes him so interesting to me in this setting, because in the NCAA tournament, when teams are forced to play at different paces, when possessions just simply matter more, players like this start to stand out in a really good way. And it's not because they're flashy, but it's because they're just completely effective. So for St. Mary's, if they win a couple games, you're going to look up and realize he's been one of the most impactful players on the floor the entire time. So when they make a run, if they make a run, he's not going to be a secret for very long. And I just really am excited to see what he does. Now, this next one, Malik Reneau at Miami, it's really a guy that you should already be talking about, but no one is, and more people should. Now, Malik Reneau has just been a guy all year that gives Miami real production whenever he's on the court. Now, he's physical, and he can score, and what I like most about him is that he's comfortable playing through contact. And then you get into a tournament setting, like we've been talking about this whole video, it matters a ton because games inevitably will slow down, possessions will get a little bit tougher, and ultimately you're just going to need players that can go get you a bucket. Not just within the offense, but when everything starts to break down and things start kind of grinding a little bit. And Reneau can simply do that. He can put up 20 plus. Like I've seen multiple games where he does it. He can control stretches of those games at times, and he doesn't need everything around him to be perfect in order for that to happen. He can still remain effective. And those are the players that start to stand out as this tournament goes on. And so if Miami wins a couple of games, he could be one of the best players in the entire tournament, and that's not a joke. And the last guy on this list, Thijs De Ridder at Virginia. And yeah, Virginia's a top 3 seed, but this is a perfect example of a team people think they know, but they just haven't watched that much of this year. So Thijs De Ridder is one of those players where I do believe a lot of people have heard the name, but they just don't understand how good he is yet. And I think that because he's got real size, but he also has the ability to create his own shot, and that combination is pretty rare, especially in this UVA system, which is new under Coach Odom. But when people think of Virginia, they still think of structure, pace, and defense. I don't think people think of UVA and imagine a forward that has his size who can actually get his own offense. But that's what makes this so interesting and him so interesting in this tournament, is because once you see it, once you see the versatility in the shot making and the feel that he has, it's going to change how you look at that team and that program entirely. So it might be hard to understand, but he might be the best player in this tournament. And I know I've said that about a few people, but Thijs De Ridder is going to be able to play himself into a top 10, top 5 NBA pick. And that's just what makes this tournament so different. It's not just about the teams. It's about the players you don't see coming. Now, every year, a few names take over everything. That's the highlights, the conversations, the moments that people remember. And the only thing that they takes and that they need to do is win a couple of games. So maybe it's one of these 5. Maybe it's someone we didn't mention. But I can guarantee by the end of the tournament, there are going to be a few names that everyone knows that they didn't know coming into it. So I appreciate you watching. We're going to be here a lot through the NCAA tournament, have a lot of coverage, breaking down the players, the matchups, everything that matters as it all unfolds. So once this season wraps up, we'll also be all over the transfer portal. We've done that for the last couple of years. So if you're into this kind of breakdown and player film, make sure you're subscribed, and I hope to see you on the next one.